Okay, in our introduction to Illustrator here, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go to our website. We're going to download these 3 files. If you want to change your downloads folder on Chrome, go to these 3 dots up at the right corner, go to Settings, go over here to Advanced, Downloads, and then select where you want your downloads folder to be. I'm going to select the Illustrator folder that I asked you to create, the subfolder. So for now, while we're learning Illustrator, we're just going to download all those files directly there. And then when we go back, Navigation, Game Board, and if this pops up, this is like a preview. It's going to give us like a preview of what we're downloading. So up here, we just want to click on Download. It'll ask us if we want to download to this folder. Say yes. Close this, back out of it. Select to affect it, same thing. So the first one, navigation. This was a file that was created in Illustrator 2019 and the other 2 Illustrator 2020. So I'm just going to pause this for a second while we launch the first one. So you're going to have to open Illustrator, whether you have 2019 or 2020 at home. So some of my other students who have downloaded Adobe programs at home, they're getting the most recent version, and for some reason here at school, they haven't been updated completely yet. So we're going to start with just whatever we have here at school, which is 2019, and then as time goes on, I'm assuming they're going to update it. But if you're working at home, everything should be pretty close to the same. There might be some features I'm not sure if we'll get to or not, but we'll approach that when we get there. So I'll open up the first one. I'll just pause this video. Okay, so when Illustrator launches, we've got our Start window. We've got some tutorials we could open up in the browser that Adobe has created. They're okay. We're going to look at some different ones. So there's a couple ways to open up your files in Illustrator. You can either, in the welcome screen, you can click Open. On the File drop down, you can click Open. From your folder, you can double click on a file and it will open as well. So pretty common from program to program. Those are ways to open your file. Now for navigation, we're just going to look at kind of the workspace and then how to get around here. I'm going to give you an assignment to look at. So they say, you know, here's our quick tour. I'm just going to close that. Now, if you're working with any Adobe program, they look similar, a lot of them, especially Photoshop and Illustrator. So we've got our toolbar along the left. We've got panels over here. So if we click on one of these tools here, let's click on the text or the type tool. So when we click on a tool, often our properties panel to the right will change, giving us all the features or the different types of adjustments we can make to that tool. So we go down, we find another tool, maybe a gradient tool, and then sometimes it'll pop up with, hey, here's a way to use this tool. So this is definitely helpful. So it'll help you figure out which tools do what and pointers on that. Sometimes when we're looking at tools in our toolbar, we will see this little arrow or little triangle at the bottom right. And that means basically when you hold down, when you press, there's tools hidden underneath there that are similar. So for the rectangle tool, we've got the ellipse tool, the polygon, star tool, the line segment tool. So if we want to select one of those tools, we just have to select it from underneath. So in Illustrator, we've got something called an artboard. So that's what this area is. So the artboard is where we're going to create our graphic or graphics, and then we can have multiple artboards on one document. I'll go into that again later. Let's go back to this. The top tool is our selection tool. So when we hover over top of each of these tools, it'll kind of give us a description of what that tool is or what the name of that tool. It'll also have in brackets the keyboard shortcut. Now we are going to be using the selection tool the most, so we want to just start remembering some of these shortcuts. So if I press V on my keyboard, it goes straight to the selection tool. If we go down here to the zoom tool, if we click on the zoom tool, let's just zoom in. We'll click and drag. So we can zoom out, click and drag up, zoom in, click and drag. So an example of a big difference between vector graphics and images. So in Photoshop, if we keep zooming in, we're eventually going to see these squares, and they're called pixels. Depending on, you might have a really high quality image and you just keep zooming in, and eventually you will see the pixels. When you're working with vector graphics, this line here and this line here and this line here, everything stays the same. So it doesn't matter how much we zoom in or how much we zoom out, we will keep the same clarity in our image. So these are scalable. So vector graphics are scalable. So I've said this before. If we wanted to print this and we wanted it to be the size of maybe a phone, this whole document, we could print it and everything would look pretty good. If we wanted to print this the size of like a billboard and put it up on a billboard on a street, same thing. We would have the same basically the same clarity to it. So if we click on the zoom tool and we find, so the zoom tool is, the shortcut is Z, and then underneath that, the hand tool, this will help us move our document around. So what I like to do is, we're going to start with today just learning just these basics. We can play around with these a little bit, but with the navigation file, we're going to start with the start. So let's press Z on our keyboard. We are going to zoom in, and we're going to press H on the keyboard to navigate around. So I want you to navigate between the zoom tool and another shortcut right here. So as we zoom in, it says hold the spacebar to pan. So this, if we hold down H, we go to the hand tool. If we hold down the spacebar, it's temporary. So when I let go, we're back at the zoom tool. So I want you to go through each step in this game board and learn some of these basic getting started tips for using Illustrator. Then I'd like you to go to the game board, and this is a similar one, but I'd like you to do the same thing. Use the zoom and pan and go through the whole game board. It's a different game board. It'll give you some more tips. Then we're going to go to select it to affect it. So I'm going to pause this video here, and then I'm going to go directly to this one. Okay, so after pausing that, giving you a chance to go through the navigation AI and then the game board AI files, select it to affect it. So the next tool that we're going to look at, when we use the selection tool, when we click on any of these graphics here, we can see our properties panel changes. And as you can imagine, this yellow is our fill and the line around it is our stroke. So quickly, I'm just going to go over this. I want you to change each of these shapes. I want you to change the fill, and I want you to change the stroke. That's all we're doing today for Illustrator. I'm keeping this short, and we're just looking at the selection tool, zoom, and the hand tool or the pan.